Alrighty, welcome to Yoga for Mom and Dad Part 2. Today is a vinyasa flow class, so we're going to be doing more moving around and less stable poses, but some stable poses as well. A little bit of everything. Today you need a block and some very cute dogs behind you. But we're going to start off with a little mountain pose exercise, which is quite fun. But you're going to take your block, stand up straight and tall, and you're going to tuck your block in between your legs. And then you're going to think about rotating your thighs in and up and flexing your butt to stand here nice and steady. As you're standing here, I want you to make your way over to the pull-up bar if you're at home, or something else that you can hang on if you're not. And if you can't hang on anything, just make your way into child's pose. I already hung on the bar, so I practiced it right before. But go and hang on the bar with the block in between and work on flexing your leg muscles and your butt. And then as you're hanging, maybe like dipping your knees around. Let your spine lengthen out. It lengthens out your shoulders quite a bit more too, but stay on the bar for a good minute here. Just letting your spine elongate. And as that's going on, pay attention to the muscles around your abs. See if you can use your muscles to help lengthen your spine, holding it about in place. And then whenever you're done, you can pause the video and take longer if you want, but letting go of the bar, remember that elongated feeling in your lower abdomen. And now try to use your abs to maintain that same posture, even though you're not being pulled by gravity now. You're still lengthening in that area. And that's going to come in a lot for what we're talking about today. We're talking about anterior and posterior tilt of the hips, which is something I wish someone told me way earlier in yoga. But we learned about it at our training. So your spine is obviously connected to your hips. But what that means is that anytime you fold forward, your hips tip forward or backwards. Anterior is forward, posterior is backwards. You can remember because it's in alphabetical order, the A goes forward and the P goes backwards, or you can remember because post means behind, or like the past, which is behind you. But anyway, if you're ever folding forward, wherever you're in a motion in the entirety of yoga where you're folding forward, you want to be doing a forward tilt of your hips so that your spine is in line with your pelvis. And the same thing goes for back bends. So whenever you're going backwards, you want a posterior tilt. So we're going to bring that up a lot today. So let's get into it. We're going to do a little bit with our block here. So make your way to the back of the mat and keep your block in between your legs. Working on some of that mountain pose activation from your thighs and your butt. So we're going to bring our hands up high, and then our first forward fold of class. Try to keep a straight back. A little bend in your knees. Just see how far out you can go. And maybe it's like right here. Maybe that's all you get, and that's okay. But use the mirror, maintaining a flat back, sticking out your tailbone. Anterior tilt, hips going forward. And then let go and allow yourself to round. Secondarily to your hips tipping. A few breaths here. Inhale, walk your way out into a plank pose. And we're going to hold the plank pose with this block. Just waking up for plank. Once again, pushing into the ground. And the shoulders, arms are externally rotated. Kneecaps are pointed straight down at the ground. You got a little bit of a dome towards your shoulder blades, and stay here to breathe. This one's going to be tricky. Exhaling first into a downward dog, just real quick. Heels up high, knees down low. We're going to jump our way to the front of the mat, or walk. Do a little tippy toe walk, or hop your way to the front. Inhale halfway to lift. Flatten out your back. It doesn't have to be parallel with the ground, but just flat. Exhale, anterior tilt, hips moving forward. Forward fold, inhale your way up into mountain pose. Exhale audibly through your nose. Now we're going to get rid of the block, but keep it near you. We're going to use it later. But I want you to imagine that it's still there. And that same glute and thigh activation, even when you're on one leg and getting into crazy stuff, you want to be able to maintain that same activation. So inhale, hands up high. Exhale, anterior tilt, forward facing fold. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale, plant the hands, walk your way back. We're going to do a lot of push-ups today too, but we're just going to go through chaturanga. So just move slightly forward, exhale to 90 degrees, Shoulders rolled back, arms externally rotated. Inhale back into plank. We're going to do up dogs later. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, knees down low. Walk, jump, or float your way to the front. The block is still held there. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale, tailbone sticking up towards the sky. Forward fold. Inhale, slowly. Make your way to mountain pose. Drink a tiny bit of water. Maybe hold some in your mouth to practice your breathing. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, tipping from the hips, forward facing fold. All the way out with your breath. Inhale to lift. Exhale, plant the hands, walk, step, or jump back to chaturanga, one yoga push-up. Inhale to plank pose, exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, heels up high, exhale, knees down low. Jump, float, or walk your way to the front. Inhale, halfway to lift, straighten out your spine. Exhale, anterior tilt, hips moving forward, forward facing fold. Slow and controlled, inhale your way back up into mountain pose. Exhale to stay. Make sure you're taking the proper time to warm up as well. We jumped into this a bit today, but if you want some extra time for the shoulders or legs, totally cool. We just got a lot planned, so I was too excited. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, anterior tilt, forward facing fold. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale, plant the hands, jump or hop your way back into chaturanga. Still imagine that block's there. 90 degrees on the elbows, elbows in. Inhale into plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. Around in your down dog, taking a bit of movement, maybe heels up high, move them over to the left, and then over to the right. Maybe a little bend in the legs. Imagine that that block's still there, and maybe even stick it back, just to readjust yourself here, squeezing them on the block. Use your mirror, do your best to flatten out the space from your hips to your shoulders, no matter how bent your legs need to be. A little bit of block to the side. Let's move on a little bit. Inhale, right leg to three-legged dog. Exhale, sticking it through the middle, pushing into the ground, slow and controlled. Exhale. Dome in the upper back. Coming up for a high lunge. Once again, we've got right heel, right knee, right hip on the same plane. Left hip, left knee, left foot on the same plane. Maybe wiggling out your foot to the side. Balance is tricky. Flattening out our back here. Inhale. Hip straight up, just for one breath. Exhale, hands onto the ground. Right foot comes back. Make your way maybe through a one-legged push-up. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, right or left leg. Slow and controlled, bring your knee through the center. Pushing the shoulder blades away. Stepping the foot. Check for alignment again. Left heel, left knee, left hip. Don't let your hips move forward or back in space. Use the mirror. Adjust your right leg, straighten out your back as best you can, and then inhale from the hips. And do a lunge, just one breath. Exhale, hands onto the ground. One-legged chaturanga. Inhale to plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, heels up high. Exhale, knees down low. Walk, jump, or hop your way to the front of the mat. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale, forward facing fold. Slightly different here. Inhale your way to chair pose. With that block still there. Maybe tuck it back and be here for just a second. Finding alignment. In chair, you don't want to tilt either direction. So you don't want to be tilting forward, don't want to be tilting back, you want a neutralness. Everyone's hips are inclined to go one way or another, and maybe go 1% in the opposite direction that you're inclined to. But neutral is the space we're looking for. Breathe slower. Exhale, block goes away. Inhale, rise to mountain pose. Slow it down, 2 breaths of focus. Even though I'm talking a lot and a lot's going on, find that stillness through the entirety of practice. Just like before. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, anterior tilt, forward facing fold. Stick out your tailbone. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale, plant the hands, jump or walk back. One yoga push-up. Inhale to plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, three-legged dog, right foot goes high. Exhale, pushing it through the center. Making our way to high lunge again, one breath faster this time. Exhale, down into the ground, one-legged push-up. Exhale, downward facing dog. Got Western all of a sudden, left leg goes up. Exhale, push the knee. Checking for alignment, just like before. Inhale, high lunge. Exhale, yoga push-up. Inhale to plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. Knees up high, heels up high, knees down low. Jump, float, walk. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale to fold. Stick that block in between your legs. Inhale to chair pose. Slow it down. You're supposed to do a chair on the way in, but I think it's more fun to just hold it here for today. Play around with your block. Maybe the wider setting is more fun. Sit 1 inch deeper in your chair. Move the block off to the side. Inhale. Up high, mountain pose. 2 slow breaths through the nose. I'm feeling pretty warmed up. The sun salutes are supposed to be the yoga warm up until you break a sweat, and I'm sweating. So let's move on to the next thing. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, anterior tilt through the hips, and then making your way into the rounded back. Inhale, halfway straighten out. Exhale, plant the hands, jump or walk your way back. Yoga push-up. Inhale into plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale the right foot high up behind you. And let's take a second here to open up your dog, doing your best not to let your right shoulder fall up in space. Tilt your knee off to the side and bring your knee up towards the sky. Exhale, knee through the center. We're making our way up once again into a high lunge. And find some stillness. We're going to hold this for just a second here. Breathing in and out through the nose. Do your best so that the top of your hips are level with each other and that they're not tilted to either side. And then maybe sink down towards 90 degrees on the front leg. Let's have the back knee with a little bend in it today, but mostly straight. When you're folding, you want to start from the hips, but when you're not meant to be folding, you want your back to be straight. And that's going to come into play into 2 poses from now, but we want to do our best to make sure that we're doing the poses with proper alignment. Alignment is more important than the number of reps or how long you can hold it. Inhale, we're going to plant the back foot onto the ground, doing our best, rear one's tricky, but doing our best to keep our hips facing forward and our left hip not sneaking back in space. Straighten the right leg. Inhale, with a straight back, have your block handy, a slight bend in the right knee, activation through both feet. We're tipping out forward. See how far you can get with your back being straight, and maybe that's on the high setting of the block. Maybe it's on the medium setting of the block. Use the mirror and just find wherever it is. Not too much effort here. And just breathe, slow and controlled. Back straight. Think about your tailbone moving up in space. Here it should be pointing straight back towards the wall behind us in feeling. Inhale the lift and then exhale, folding out. Continue that tailbone lift. Maybe hands still up on the blocks. Maybe heels down onto the floor. A slight bend in the right leg, but trying to round starting from the hips so that the tip begins here. I can get down farther if I, jerk my back that direction, but that's not good for me. A few more seconds here. Bending the right leg, keeping the hips level to the ground, using that block. We're coming up into Warrior 3 prep, which is just Warrior 3 with the hands down. And now we're really going to use the mirror here and do your best to straighten out your back. And maybe that means more blocks, and maybe that means not level to the ground. But keeping your back straight, hips in a neutral position here, pushing into the right foot, left foot comes up in space. Breathe, slow and controlled. Think about mountain pose on your right leg, but your right leg is directly underneath your right hip socket. It's not in between your legs here. Inhale to straighten. Exhale, maybe taking this lifted forward-facing fold flagpole. Your left foot does not go very, or my left foot doesn't go very high here, but it can. Inhale, feet together. Find some length in your back and then forward-facing fold. Great job. I somehow got all sorts of off the mat here. But inhale slowly into mountain pose. We'll go straight into mountain. Breathe. Find a moment to reset. That length of the spine that we practiced on the pull-up bar a minute ago, super important for Warrior 3. Even when you're in that position, you don't want to compromise and try to find too much strength out of your lower back. You're just holding it in place. The strength is in your buns. But find that same length that you found hanging on the pull-up bar again in mountain pose here. Mountain bar. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, forward facing fold. Inhale, halfway to lift. Plant the hands, jump, walk, or step your way back through yoga push-up. Just the chaturanga section. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, left leg coming up high here. Bending the knee, open up your dog. Don't let your left shoulder come up in space. Stack your hips. Slow and controlled. Exhale, pushing your knee through the center. Making our way to a high lunge. Same variation you took on the other side. Check for alignment of the left leg, then the right, then the hips. Making our way upwards. Skull is directly above your pelvis in a mostly straight line, except for the natural bends of the spine. Breathe slowly. Do your best to focus on the moment in the breaths. Whenever it gets quiet and hard, it's easy to think about how much do we have left, but the practice of meditation and the physical maintenance of yoga isn't about the time. It is, however, about the stillness and the thoughts. Think about that mountain pose, left leg, your butt should super be engaged here. Even though we're not off to the sides, hockey players like that external leg push, but we're working on getting it even though our toes are pointed straight forward here. Inhale, placing our back foot into that warrior one bent leg. Straightening the left foot, checking for alignment again. Moving around however we see fit, doing our best to keep our hips straight and towards the front. Tailbone is directly underneath both legs. Right leg is not internally rotated, so the knee's pointing straight forward, a micro bend in it. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, tipping from the hips. Keeping a back straight. Find pyramid pose with a straight back. And then breathe. If there's tension or pain in this pose, back up. Come a little higher, put the feet a little closer together. You can't force your way through it. You can just find where you are today and then work at it. Inhale to straighten and then tipping from the hips, thinking about the anterior tilt of the pelvis. Start to reach out over your leg. A little bend in the knee, not hyperextending. Finding depth all the way down your back. Evenly. Pull the left hip back in space. It starts to sneak forward as you lean forward. Last inhale to stay and exhale to stay. On your exhale, a little bend in the left knee. Hips stay in all of the same alignments. We're coming up for Warrior 3 prep on the other side. Maybe back up so you can use the mirror. That's why I was all sorts of off the mat. Right hip comes down in space. Think about that warrior or mountain pose left leg, a little bend in the knee. Check to see if your hips are directly above your foot. They're not behind or in front. Right leg comes up, back is straight here. Flexing the abs, thinking about that pull-up length. Maybe stick the block off to the side and find a forward tip here into this flagpole. Get some good leg activation, pushing into the left leg here. Exhale, feet together, forward facing fold at the front of the mat. Inhale, slow and controlled. Making our way up into mountain pose. Once again, find that pull-up bar length and activation. Checking to see if there's any pain or discomfort here coming from those previous poses, just paying attention to it. finding what needs to be done differently next time. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, anterior tilt, folding forwards. Getting right back into it. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale, jump back to a chaturanga. Let's hold for a quick second here. Don't forget about the arms. Inhale into plank. Exhale into downward facing dog. Regain your breath here. Inhale, three-legged dog, right foot comes up high. Exhale, knees to the hands here. We're making our way into warrior two. So checking for alignment of the right hip, knee, ankle again, back foot. Planted 45 degrees off to the side, windmilling the hands up and above. Pointing front and back of the room. Hips are tilted 45 degrees to the side of the mat, but the top of the left and right hip are equal. Find some depth here. We'll be here for a second. Use this mirror. Think about pushing and pulling the feet just like last time. And then actively pushing down in space. Don't let yourself fall forward or back. I kind of look like I'm falling forward in the camera, but I'm neutral in the mirror here, so that's good. Here's where it gets hard. Are you ready? So think about the alignment of your spine again in one straight line. Begin to tip out over the hips. Doing your best to not round here. Doing your best to just tilt out to wherever you get to. Maybe that's up here. Maybe you can't go very far into extended side angle. Maybe you can get a little lower. Some people can get their hands all the way to the ground, but as soon as I start to go a little deeper, you can see I start to cheat bending the right leg more, or I start to round out from here, which means I need to come up on a block. I can't get quite all the way into this pose. Trying to take both the amount of time to explain it and be in the pose. 40 seconds on each side. I can always do it mirrored if I mess it up. Straightening the right leg. We're making our way into a triangle pose. You can come up to standing again, but it's the same thing as pyramid, but hips are spear-wired off to the side. Knee is not falling in, it's pointed straight ahead. Tipping from the hips, finding just the straight back here. Inhale and exhale to stay. I was trying to say, if you find one side had more attention on it today, next time you do this video, just reverse it. When I say right, go left, and etc. Some good stillness. Bend of the right knee now, making our way up into half moon pose. So once again, finding the straight back, using the block if we'd like to. Hips stack over the right leg and left leg comes high and back behind us in space. Find a focal point on the mat to help with your balance. Think about that pull-up bar length again in your lower abdomen, using your abs to secure and protect your back. Could have done an ab warm-up as well today, but I didn't think about it. Breathe slow and controlled. Use the mirror. Make sure your right hip is directly above your right ankle. Inhale, leg a little bit higher, and then stepping back through triangle pose. Slow and controlled. Fun for the balance. Inhale for warrior two. Reverse your warrior. Flipping the right palm. Think about height. High behind you, inhaling. Stay for one exhale on breath. Exhale, windmilling the hands to the ground. Let's sneak in a push-up because they're just so fun. Exhale, downward facing dog. Let's now plant our knees onto the ground and elbows onto the ground for a child's pose. And then after a few breaths, we're gonna glide through into upward facing dog. So body is flat on the ground. And then think about posterior tilting of the hips as you push into the ground. Your pelvis is tipping the opposite direction here, as if you were going to point your tailbone into the ground from above. Shoulders rolled back, pushing into the triceps. And this is why we were saving it. I love up dog and it's very fun, but it is a back bend. And when you're doing loads of push-ups, it's easy to miss that. Legs can go wider if you have lower back tension here. Glutes are super flexed and engaged, helping to protect the lower back. Exhale, slowly make your way back through downward facing dog. Inhale, heels up high. Exhale, knees down low. Walk your way to the front. Inhale to straighten out your back. Exhale, forward facing fold. Anterior tilt, starting from the hips here. Inhale, slow and controlled. Make your way up through mountain pose. Find that length from the pull-up bar using your abs and stay here for a second. Hard class today, I know. But that's what's so fun. Keeps you healthy. You clicked on the video. You know what you're doing. Inhale, hands up high. Exhale, anterior tilt. Inhale, halfway to lift. Exhale, jumping our way through a chaturanga. Inhale, staying in this plank for just a few breaths. Enjoying the moment. Exhale, downward facing dog, switching sides. Inhale, left leg comes side behind us for a three-legged dog. Exhale, foot comes through the center. We're finding our way into warrior two. On the other side here, check for alignment of the left leg. Hands come up high, hips 45 degrees to your front leg. Arms out in front of you. Back, knee, ankle, and heel are all working towards 45 degrees, pointing forward. Don't want the knee to cave in or out too much. In stillness into this delicious warrior two. Maybe a deeper bend of the leg, if you got it, whatever you took on the other side. Pushing through the ground, glutes engaged on both sides. Exhale, tipping into extended side angle. You already did it on one side, you can do it on this one. Try not to round from the back and tip from the hips. Everything else stays in alignment. Right hand comes up high to whatever degree you took it on the other side. Breathe slow. Left hip should be super engaged. Your left glute, your glute is what's holding you up here. A little bend in the knee, making our way into triangle pose. Straightening the leg, maybe coming up through the center, finding alignment again. Exhaling out. Whatever degree you took triangle pose on the other side, doing your best to keep your back straight here. Left hip comes back and in space. Tendency for it to tip out. You want it to be in the same line. Actively pushing into the left leg with a micro knee, not walking it out, but pushing into the left foot helps to get those muscles to stretch. Maybe letting you lean out a tiny bit deeper. That's why we keep our back straight, is this is a lower leg stretch. We're not trying to stretch our back in this pose. We're trying to stretch our hips and our leg muscles. Inhale, slight bend in the left leg, making our way to half moon pose, however you took it on the other side. Find a focal point, straightening out through your leg, toes pointed forward, knees, hip, leg in alignment. Once again, not falling to the left or the right. Right leg comes high in space behind you. Find that same ab protection before. Abs are flexed, holding you up here. Even though we're not in a plank or a crunch, this is very much still an ab pose. Left glute is firing, pushing actively into the ground away from us. Inhale, right leg a tiny bit higher. Exhale, slow and controlled. Step your way back to a triangle pose. Come up into warrior two. Reverse it just like on the other side. Top palm flips up. Think about height. Stay for the exhale. Good bend in the front leg. Exhale, windmilling the hands to the ground. Make your way through maybe a one-legged or regular chaturanga, slow and controlled. Inhale. Exhale, knees down, child's pose for one breath. And then gliding up and through for upward facing dog. Posterior tilt, glutes are engaged, shoulders rolled back. Triceps active, arms externally rotated. Flex your glutes, maybe widen your legs. Think about tilting your hips the other direction. That's where the beginning of this back bend comes from. Always inhaling for back bends, the posterior tilt. Exhaling for anterior tilt, forward fold. No matter what the pose is. This is going to be tricky, but making your way, bending your legs. See if you can get yourself into a seated position for a little hop. Or however you can, just because it's so fun. Inhale, shoulders roll back. We're going to do a little counter stretch ab work here. Maybe taking a drink of water. It also helps to have two blocks, um, but you don't have to. I'll just demonstrate the two blocks today because it's so fun. Put feet onto the ground, shoulders rolled back, hands behind us, arms are going straight back. We're lifting up into reverse tabletop here. Looking for a flat line between your shoulders and knees. Buns are flexed, push into the ground. Bring tension out of your neck and where it doesn't need to be. 5 breaths here, slow and controlled. And then exhale slowly. We're making our way first into a seated staff pose shape. And then shoulders rolled back. We're going to be pushing into the ground. It can help to have these blocks here. But first, shoulders rolled back, pushing into the ground. Lift your hips off the ground. Maybe lift one leg at a time. Maybe lift both off of the ground for a fancy L-sit. You can try to do it without the blocks. My background's a tiny bit, which I think is fine. My arms are long enough otherwise. Plank the feet onto the ground, make your way back into a tabletop. 5 breaths. Exhale, slow and controlled, making your way into that lifted L-sit. Maybe feet touch, but hips are still off the ground. Just do your best to make it work. It's lifting one leg, and then the other. Last breath, exhale, reverse tabletop. Shoulders are cooking, I know too. Pain is bad, physical and muscular exertion is good. There's a line. We occasionally toe it. We're in tabletop, by the way. We occasionally toe it. That's fun. Exhale, last one, coming into the seated L. Oh my goodness, maybe using the blocks. Inhale, chest high, shoulders roll back, pushing into the ground. One leg off the ground, 2. Whole body. Exhale, rolling all the way into the ground. Take 1 breath of rest, you've earned it. Okay, breath's done. Shoulders rolled back, we're coming into bridge pose. First grabbing onto opposite edges of the mat. Or if that's going incredibly well, you can interlock your hands underneath you. And we're just staying, flexing the hips, pushing the glutes up towards the ceiling here. Don't let the knees cave outwards or inwards, straight ahead. You can put your good friend the block back if you want to work on alignment. Exhale, hips to the ground. Let's make our way into a boat pose. Last little bit here today. Balancing on the front and the back of the sit bones, on the hips. Doing our best to raise our ankles, maybe straightening the legs if you're a crazy person and you need more. But not giving up the lower back. We don't want to round, we want our back to be straight. It feels kind of like an anterior tilt here. Abs are still in though. Reach your right arm forward, your left arm forward. Flip your right hand over, flip your left hand over. Right arm to left shoulder, left arm to right shoulder. Hey, mock it a low boat. Okay, low boat. Shoulders off the ground, legs in the air. Do your best to make this banana shape in the mirror. Trying to lift your upper back off the ground further. Let's tilt to the left. Low boat on one side, low boat on the other side. This rotating banana, low boat left, low boat right, low boat center, and then down onto the ground. Warm up, sun salute, standing poses, abs. Then you're done. So we're gonna go through some stretching here. Wiggle the hips, let the tension roll out. We're stretching our left leg out in front of us, sticking on the same side as we've been doing this whole time. Bending your right knee. We're gonna slowly draw it in towards our chest. but find a little activation through your left leg as if you were pushing it into a wall. Just helps get alignment to your lower body there. Breathe slowly. Extending the right leg, same position, grabbing wherever you can, even on the knee or the calf, maybe your toes. Slowly trying to release tension in the body. Nothing being hard or forced here, just a gentle stretch. Pull the right leg back in space towards you. Breath. We're coming into a figure four stretch here, a precursor to pigeon, which just talked about this morning, but grab through this four that you've made for your left thigh or left calf, and then slowly externally rotating the right leg. Fall back, moving your right knee farther away from you in space. Tiny bit of flex through the right foot helps protect the knee. As if you were standing into a wall in this crazy pose. Last inhale and exhale to stay. Switching legs. Give your legs a quick little bicycle. Get some tension out. Straighten out the right leg. A little bit of activation. Left knee hugs into your chest. We're not in the same working out mode, but we're still in focused yoga mode. Slow breathing, steadying the mind, doing your best just to focus quietly on what's in front of you. Maybe you got some jams going, some quiet yoga jams. Left leg straightens, pulling the extended leg back towards you. Slow and controlled. Great, switching legs, making our way into that figure four, same as before. Reaching down, grabbing on to your right leg wherever you took the left, leaning back, thinking about the tailbone and the shoulders all touching the ground peacefully. Make your left knee fold away from you. A little bit of activation through the left leg helps protect the left knee. And breathe slowly in and out through the nose. Inhale, exhale to stay. Release slowly with that slingshotting. Keep your knees another little bicycle. Just to hang out here. Stretch a little to the right, and then a little to the left. Then we're doing our final three poses today. But coming back into a figure four on the right, supine spinal twist. Hips come ever so slightly to the right, and then everything falls out over the left. Gaze goes to the right, over your right arm. And then you say, ah. with no tension or discomfort here, hopefully. And now flex in the abs, switching sides. Tiny little shake. Figure four on the left, hips move to the left an inch, and then follow to the right, gaze to the left. If you've got any tension at this point in class, I would also recommend sneaking in a child's pose, either after class or before bed or in the morning. Child's pose, the most neutral of all yoga poses, is supposed to be the thing for everything. And now you can think about the pelvis and how it moves around in there when you're in child's pose. I feel with an anterior tilt, tilting forward a tiny bit, it helps my back release in child's pose. But play around with it. You already took time to do yoga today, but you can take a few more minutes for a nice child's pose. Flexing the abs safely, coming back through center. I'm coming up to the front just so you can hear me. But we're making our way into the most important pose of the day, probably on your back, Shavasana. Or you can take it in a seated pose for seated meditation, which would be fun. Giving yourself a quick body scan. Just noticing, hopefully, how nice you feel right now. Paying attention to those communications from our body. Let your breath fall back into an automatic rhythm. Inhaling and exhaling as you see fit, no longer controlling it. And then bringing our attention to our meditation for today. If you want stillness, now is an excellent time to turn off the video. Silence, I guess. We got stillness on all sides. But if you don't want to hear me talk, just turn off the video and lie in silence. That is an excellent strategy. It takes practice. Or if you want some extra philosophy, today we're talking about another one of those pillars of meditation. And today we're talking about how everything is temporary is the second pillar. And we're all scientists here. We know the measurements of time and how the universe was created and how 14.3 billion years is a long time, and Earth hasn't been around for very long of that, and life on Earth hasn't existed for very long of that, and humans haven't existed for very long of that, and we, as individuals, have existed for a tiny, teeny fraction of it. And on a large enough scale, these things all move and change. They come and they go. Everything comes and goes. And that is natural and how it is. And we should live in the moment and love and be entrenched in the world around us, but we should also understand that things pass. And that is both wonderful and okay. And it also helps us to measure our valuable days that we have, each one a day in itself that does not come back, nor never gets a second chance. It's just today. So make the most of it. Do the things that you want to do today, that you plan on doing, that you think you should do, or that are good to do. Do them purposefully, because you have chosen to do them. And then tell yourself, good job. Both for doing yoga today, and for doing all those wonderful things. Love you lots. See you soon.